Hello everybody, I'm Cage from CubePunks, and this right here is an illustration I did for the upcoming game Scarab's Ring that CubePunks is going to be releasing. This asset right here was drawn in Clip Studio Paint, which is my go-to digital art program for probably about 4 years now. While it's not open source software and you do have to pay for it, luckily the license I purchased was a one-time payment, which I think is completely fair, and something I would recommend you getting because of all the features that Clip Studio Paint provides. This video is one half me breaking down the features that I use in basically every illustration I do in Clip Studio Paint nowadays, as well as quickly overviewing how to use each feature. Now, first thing first, the most basic of features, however, something that I think is essential in all art programs, yet sometimes it's not in one, the brush stabilizer. So you want to know how artists are able to get these smooth, curved lines with their digital illustrations? Well, what is being used is a pen stabilizer. How it works is this. When your stabilization is 0 with your pen, if you try to go wobbly lines, it comes out like that. However, if you take your stabilization and crank it all the way up, what you get when you try to do the same exact motion is that. Stabilization, no stabilization. The best way to describe it is that the stabilizer creates a sort of a drag and a lag to your pen when you're making the motion. And what that does is that if there's any like minor bumps or turbulence when you're making an arc, the drag and the delay smoothens it out. Here's me quickly drawing a spiral with my stabilization all the way up, and here's what the spiral looked like when I tried drawing it with stabilization at 0. These are nice smooth curves, these are lumpy and awkward. For the most part, when I do my sketch layers, I have my stabilization entirely off. I'm trying to get the general form, constructs, and shape done, but the line quality is just going to be pretty bad. But then I take the opacity down, go back in with another layer, and then have my stabilization between 50 to 100, and then go in and make those clear, defined final lines. This is a good segue into the topic of what layer type I use when inking. See, Clip Studio Paint has 2 layer types, raster layers and vector layers. What I personally do is that all my shading and coloring layers are going to be raster. Try and get all these color transitions gradating from one another. It's not really something you can do with a vector. However, for all the line art, I use vector lines for those. Vector layers provide a great level of control to lines that you've already drawn that you're not going to get with raster layers. The best example I can go to is intersecting lines. Say I want to get rid of these parts right here. Well, what I'm going to have to do is go in and shave off these parts at the corner right here with an eraser tool. And if you do this a million times for an illustration, like say every single one of the tips of the wings on the scarab here, the tips down here, the tips of the thing up here, it's going to be a lot of work. Work that you got to make sure that you do correctly and make it smooth. And it gets like surgery when you have to do this a million times and you have to do them in the tricky spots. However, if you do the same intersecting line example with a vector layer, now all you got to do is just grab the vector brush and then just highlight the 2 lines that you want removed and boom, it's gone and you have it tipped right here. This single example right here is a huge time saver on my work, especially because I like characters with a lot of pointed edges. But this gets even better because when you try to rotate a raster layer, what you get is you get these weird little fuzzy anti-aliasing going on here. Just the lines are doing all this pixelation here. And if you want to scale up lines, then you're going to run into issues too with pixelation. Raster layers, on the other hand, you want to rotate the angle? Okay, you can do that, and no pixelation is occurring. And what if you want to make it bigger? Well, you can scale up the line, do this, and no pixelation is occurring. In fact, if we even want to change the brush size after you drew the line, there you go. You can just change the brush size with a slider by selecting the Operation tab. But wait, there's more. Because if you go to the Correct Line tab, you have all these options to adjust your lines after you draw them. The controls say what they do, but to give a quick example, say I want to make this line taper off more at the edge here. Well, all I gotta do is just have the narrow on there, highlight it, and then just comb it down. And after I comb it down, I got the line more tapered. And then, I go in and I make sure I get the lumpy parts less lumpy. I see a part that should be thicker a little bit, so let's thicken it up a bit. But say that was just all crap and I want to just make it all fixed width. Well, I can do that, and there you go. The line is all fixed width. If you're an artist who doesn't have the perfect hand for line quality, you don't always draw your lines correct the first time you draw them, this is a very effective tool. And a lot of times when I draw my illustrations, I do just go with a general fixed line width approach, and then use the correct line tools to do all the line tapering after the line work is done. Most art applications are going to give you the freedom of control that you're going to be able to find with Clip Studio Paint's raster layer features. However, I've not found too many that provide the same options with the vector layer options. And finally, the last of the big 3 reasons why I like Clip Studio Paint so much is actually one that I've been using more recently, but it's such a huge time saver, which are gradient maps. So as you see on the beetle's body, colors are all grayscale. However, when I turn on this layer, the colors come to life. That right there is entirely what gradient maps do. What happens is when you have a layer that has light values and dark values, and you add a gradient map layer, which can be found in layer, correction layer, and gradient map, what you do is you get different color options to toggle between and change and adjust and slide. Bottom of the gradient here remaps all the darkest values to one color, and in turn all the lightest values get remapped to this color up here. This is great because say I want to dial in and change the colors a bit more on the beetle here. Like say that I feel like that the shadows need to be a little bit more pronounced. I can do the slide of the gradients this way. Or say that I want to make the highlight color a bit more red. Well, I can go in here and then all the highlight colors are red there. Well, that looks a little bit funky, but same time, the beauty of gradient maps is that none of this is really being permanent. All I'm doing is just adjusting the gradient maps remapping, not the actual layer underneath. So I'm not destroying all the shading that I've done before. I spend a layer just focusing and making sure that I get the blending looking right and correct and all the volume is the way I want it to look. And I slap another layer on top of it to basically handle all the color blending for me. Trying to do color blending and volume at the same time, a little tricky. So oftentimes you end up with colors that look a little bit muddy. Sometimes you end up with just a color palette that looks ugly. Similar to why I like drawing with vector layers for my line art, gradient maps give me that extra level of control to my colors after they're laid out, and I can always go back and fix them with relative ease. So brush stabilizer, vector layers, and gradient maps. Those are the 3 things that sell me on sticking with Clip Studio Paint. And these are also what I consider to be my 3 main secret weapons when I do my coloring and inking of my artwork. Hopefully this video was helpful. If you want to support us, you can go over to our website and play our video games. And if you want more cool stuff, you can go over to our Patreon for exclusives and early access to content, including videos like this one. All right, that will be it for today. See ya.